Is a cell tower going up in your neighborhood? If it's not now, it may soon. Wireless carriers are installing millions of them across the country to enable the new, faster 5G cell phone technology. But tonight, Julie Watts asked the question you're not supposed to ask. Are there legitimate health concerns?
It's keeping John Heestand up at night. This new pole outside his bedroom window where Verizon will soon install a next-generation cell tower, just feet from a school.
This would be a big tower pushing out radiation outside of our bedroom window, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for many years.
It's called a small cell or distributed antenna system, similar to this one in San Francisco. The industry says they're safe. Many in Piedmont aren't convinced.
Our daughter is a cancer survivor.
13-year-old Sophia has been one of many petitioning the city council to deny this cell tower and others.
I'm also a brain cancer survivor, and I am against the cell towers.
I mostly talked about my cancer and how it affected me.
But according to federal law, the city simply can't consider health concerns. It's outlined in this small section of the Telecommunications Act, based on science from 1996.
To turn your phone on or off.
Back when this was the height of technology.
But if cities do consider health, the cell companies can sue. So with few legal arguments to deny a cell tower, they're popping up outside bedroom windows and school campuses, despite objections from across the country.
5G can be a tremendous boom to California, but only if it can be put up quickly and easily.
Hayward Assemblymember Bill Quark co-authored legislation that would make it even harder for cities like Piedmont to object to a tower.
You wouldn't have to go through the Planning Commission, through the City Council.
The former NASA scientist says he may resurrect the bill recently vetoed by the governor.
I know scientifically that putting up these cell phone towers is safe.
But the International Association of Firefighters disagrees. They began opposing cell towers on fire stations after firefighters complained of health problems.
These firefighters developed symptoms.
Dr. Gunnar Heuser conducted a pilot study on firefighters at a station with cell towers.
And the symptoms included problem with memory, problem with intermittent confusion, problem with weakness.
Heuser says their brain scans suggest even low-level RF can cause cell damage, and he worries about more vulnerable groups like kids.
So we found abnormal brain function in all of the firefighters we examined.
So, following lobbying by firefighters, Quark and his co-author exempted fire stations from their bill, making them one place cell companies couldn't put a tower.
This is the first piece of legislation that I think anyone's aware of where somebody got an exemption because they were concerned about health. Did they tell you at all about the study?
All I know is that when the firefighters ask, I do what they ask me to do.
Because they're strong lobbyists?
Yes.
So if, say, school teachers and parents had a strong lobby and they asked you to pass something that would prevent these from going up in your schools, would you do that?
If I couldn't get the votes any other way.
Firefighter and cancer survivor Tony Stefani notes,
it's not only firefighters, it's the people that live in the general vicinity of these towers.
Current regulations don't take into account continuous low-level exposure from these small cells 24 hours a day.
More of these studies have to be done.
There are 230 scientists from 41 countries who have apparently reviewed more than 2,000 peer-reviewed studies, and they're calling on the World Health Organization to do more studies. They're not convinced that this is safe.
I think doing more studies is always a good thing.
Do you think that maybe you should consider putting a pause on legislation that speeds up these towers until there's definitive evidence that there is no harm?
We can do a lot of studies, and there are people right now, believe it or not, who are sure the world is flat.
In a statement, the wireless industry says it defers to experts when it comes to cell tower safety and says, according to government agencies, the scientific evidence shows no known health risk. But what about the unknown? Well, back in Piedmont, the Heestands don't want to wait around to find out.
We're going to get some meters and we're going to measure the microwave radiation today, and then when the cell towers go up, we can measure it and see how dangerous it really is.
And he says if he has to, they'll move.
For my daughter's health, definitely.
Well, Julie reports Piedmont did block some cell towers and is now being sued. Meanwhile, new government research set to be published next month could radically alter the debate. It's expected to link RF radiation to health effects in lab rats.
More bars, more data, faster speeds. Our desire for all things digital has cellular providers scrambling, and the antennas needed for all of that can emit radiation hot enough to cook human tissue. But no one's warning us about the invisible danger. CBS 46's Jennifer Emmert investigates.
Our cell phones keep us connected to anyone, anywhere. What we hate is having that call cut short.
Can you hear me now?
Cellular providers promise us bigger, better networks.
Now these fans have a network strong enough for them to tweet, post, and upload.
They deliver by adding antennas to billboards, commercial and residential rooftops, and parking garages, closer and closer to us.
We're 300, 350%, 400%. When you're over 100, people get injured.
RF energy coming from antennas can cook the body, much like being inside a microwave oven.
You're going to heat up without doing any physical activity.
Our brains are very sensitive to RF radiation, and it can cause memory loss, mood disorders.
More than 1 in 10 rooftop sites nationwide are in violation of federal safety rules, leaving painters, roofers, maintenance workers, and anyone who accidentally walks by with no idea how to control their exposure.
I'm going on a rooftop to service a piece of equipment. I'm going on a rooftop to do a visual inspection of something. Well, nobody's notified.
San Diego radio frequency expert Drew Fountain and Phoenix's Marvin Wessel are dedicated to exposing RF industry hazards across the country.
The radio frequency radiation is invisible, tasteless, and odorless.
Fountain flew to Atlanta to help CBS 46 analyze the invisible rooftop threats we uncovered. The danger zone of this newer rooftop antenna extends 25 feet.
Well, we were out 18 feet, and we were too close.
According to law, the signs and locks on this door to the rooftop don't go far enough and likely wouldn't keep anyone from walking into the antenna's footprint.
Signs are important, but to be used as the first and last line of defense to protect workers from RF exposure is not effective, and it's not working.
While rooftops may be an occupational risk, we found 2 sites in Midtown parking garages anyone could access. At the first, it only takes a chair to expose us.
We all got 5 bars coming through our heads.
And at the second, you can actually reach over and touch the antennas.
We were having 500, 600, 700% readings a minute ago.
But an even bigger worry, antennas workers never see. These men have no idea there's a stealth antenna inside the base of the steeple next to them. In Candler Park, the Emporth United Methodist Church will have 3 antennas placed inside its steeple next spring.
You don't necessarily know if you're working in close proximity to some of this equipment.
The law requires anyone with access to a rooftop to be fully aware of the danger so they can protect themselves. In fact, our investigation found there's little policing by the FCC.
I have never run into an FCC enforcement person doing an assessment on a rooftop.
In 18 years, just one cellular company, Metro PCS, has been fined. The FCC admits 2 Verizon sites broke the rules, but they dropped their investigation.
That's the key, is protecting the workers.
Fountain's business, called RF Check, is attempting to map the invisible footprints of the nation's antennas to show where it's safe and not safe to work.
We want workers going home to their families in the same condition or better than they were when they got here.
RF radiation will only get worse as 4G LTE expands. Marvin Wessel tells us some locations will soon exceed 1,000 times the occupational safety limits. Cellular providers here in Atlanta tell us they take RF safety concerns very seriously, although they weren't serious enough to take our cameras out to show you. So you want to know how many cellular antennas are close to your home? We put together an interactive map. It's on our website. Jennifer Emmert, CBS 46 News.
Our investigation also reveals there's big money to be made by leasing rooftop space to cell phone companies. An average lease nets a building owner $23,000 a year per antenna. And the more desirable a location, the higher the price.
In the meantime, cell towers in an area filled with active kids have some parents worried about radiation levels.
10 News reporter Craig Herrera went digging for answers about some dire warnings in plain view.
These 2 new cell towers at Doyle Park and UTC have people talking. Just look at the signs posted on the poles. It's the reason concerned parents contacted 10 News. They read, "Caution, radio frequency fields near some antennas may exceed FCC rules for human exposure."
I just don't think this kind of stuff should be around school and park where the kids are around.
But they are. These towers are near a busy playground and these fields loaded with kids in after-school activities. Some are right next to bleachers where people can sit and watch a game, and Doyle Elementary School is right next door to the park as well.
I don't want to be around places like that. I bring them somewhere that they can have fresh air and feel healthy, you know.
But not all parents are worried about them.
I think you'd have to be pretty close to those things or play around them or up on them in order for the radiation levels to be harmful in any way.
10 News spoke on the phone with some experts who say the signs are usually placed there to protect the people who climb the poles for maintenance. And according to the American Cancer Society, at ground level near typical cellular base stations, the amount of radio frequency energy is thousands of times less than the limits for safe exposure set by the FCC. It is very unlikely that a person could be exposed to RF levels in excess of those limits just by being near a cell tower.
I don't know if anything like that would be safe, you know, but Dad, I'm gonna take a ride. I just don't think they should be around children.
At UTC, Craig Herrera, 10 News.
We called the City Planning Division to ask about a study done in the area, but our calls have not been returned.
This is one woman's experience of living on the top floor under cell antennas for 2 months.
It started with my daughter. She initially got a rash on her leg that was sort of unexplainable, and when she was trying to explain to me what it felt like, she kept saying it was kind of funny because it wasn't hurting inside or on the skin. She said it was hurting in the skin. And then a few days later she got another rash on her arm, and then another small kind of stranger rash, and it was the same thing. And then one day in the kitchen she was holding something and she dropped it because she said it felt like the blood in her hand went cold and in a wave along her hand to her fingertips, and then her hand stayed numb for about 15 minutes. Some more of the symptoms include a sort of hissing in my ear, in particular when I'm in my apartment, but for about 3 days, anywhere I went, it would just sort of come in. I kind of felt like an antenna, and I'd sort of kind of go like, trying to find the place where the hissing or the buzzing stopped. I've not slept in my apartment since last Saturday, so a week ago now, and the buzzing went away after about 3 days, and also the feeling of tingling all over my body slowly started to go away. But I have noticed that whenever I'm in other buildings now or anywhere close to, I don't even know what, because I was never sensitive before. I'm no Luddite. I have computers. I have all the stuff that most of us have, and I've never been sensitive at all. But now wherever I go, I'm feeling the same as I felt in my apartment, feeling dizzy and nauseous and a sort of a metallic taste in my mouth, headache and pressure on my head, and just feeling like I want to sort of faint or throw up. And that's wherever I go now. So I found myself becoming increasingly sensitive to my own computer and my own cell phone in ways that I never was before.
At the corner of Appleton Avenue and Lily Road, Penny Wagner lives in a quiet old house surrounded by flowers and trees.
A touch of nature feeds the human spirit. A steel tower does not.
Across the street, a vacant lot where U.S. Cellular recently applied to build a 120-foot tower.
It doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood.
Menominee Falls already has 11 other cellular towers, but this was to be the first on land zoned for single-family housing. And the moment Wagner heard about the plan, she launched a campaign to stop it.
No one wants a cell tower in their backyard.
In August, Wagner and her neighbors packed Menominee Falls Village Hall and urged the Plan Commission to vote against the 12-story structure.
This would obviously be a complete eyesore.
My main concern is the property values.
There is research out there as far as the health risks. It's a safety hazard.
Because of a recent change in state law, there's actually very little a city, town, or village can do to restrict the placement of cell towers. But that hasn't stopped residents across the state from trying. From Brookfield to Greendale and Mequon to Waukesha, residents have pushed back, often successfully, at plans to build new towers near their homes.
Everybody says, yes, we need faster, better, coverage, but not in my backyard.
Roughly 200,000 cellular towers already blanket the United States, with hundreds of them in southeastern Wisconsin alone. And consumer demand for faster data is driving the need for more. But State Assemblyman Mike Kuglich says the future is not 12 stories above the ground. Instead, the wireless industry is thinking small.
The beauty of the small cell is that this will offload the that demand for the larger and more large cell towers.
So-called small cell antennas will form the backbone of the next generation of wireless tech known as 5G.
I think it's imperative that we are one of the proactive and leaders in the Midwest.
Much like 2G brought us text messaging, 3G made it possible to surf the internet from our phones, and 4G gave us streaming video, 5G promises to up the ante again by connecting our ever-growing assortment of wireless devices at speeds so fast you could download a high-definition movie in a matter of seconds. One day, it could even support self-driving cars. But to make 5G work, the wireless industry will need to build an entirely new network of antennas, unlike anything we've seen before.
The question isn't if this comes, it's when.
Instead of skyscraping towers that cover vast swaths of territory, 5G will rely on clusters of small antennas attached to utility poles, street lights, and traffic signals, and wireless companies are already preparing to deploy hundreds of them in the city of Milwaukee.
What do we got to do to make this happen?
But even these small antennas face big hurdles.
I don't think municipalities are standing in the way of this.
Earlier this year, the Wisconsin State Assembly passed a bill that would pave the way for small cells by strictly limiting what cities, towns, and villages can charge to place antennas on public poles. In other words, the bill would save the wireless industry millions of dollars.
It certainly reduces their costs.
And Brenda Wood says taxpayers would pay the price.
It basically negates contracts that we negotiated in good faith.
She's a lobbyist for the city of Milwaukee, which is currently charging wireless companies more than $1,800 per pole per year to rent space in the public right-of-way. The small cell bill would cap that fee at $100, a 95% reduction.
The fees specified in the bill simply aren't enough to...
Milwaukee Public Works Director Karen Detmer says it costs them far more than $100 to scout out small cell locations and ensure they are safe.
Taxpayers will be subsidizing construction of the network for these for-profit wireless providers.
We should allow innovation, emerging technologies to prosper in the state.
The nationwide rollout of 5G is expected to begin in the next few years. But while small cell antennas may reduce the need for more new large towers, Kuglich says it will not eliminate them. So his bill gives some control back to municipalities over where the big ones can go by requiring that large towers be set back from the edge of a property at least as far as the height of the tower itself.
If it fell, it would fall right into his house.
Back in Penny Wagner's neighborhood, that would be a deal breaker. In other words, if a wireless company wanted to build a 120-foot tall tower on this property, they would have to place it (120 feet away from the property line. And on a property this size, there'd be nowhere they could fit it. Last month, U.S. Cellular withdrew its application for a tower across the street from Wagner's house. Instead, the company worked out a deal to put one elsewhere in the village.
They don't need to invade residential areas for people to have good reception.
But this surely won't be the last battle over cell phone antennas, large or small, as long as our collective appetite for wireless data continues to grow.